The stars trembled when the Korthak moved through space. For 3,000 years they had been the nightmare that entire civilizations whispered about in their final moments. Standing 12 feet tall with muscles like steel cables, their bodies were built for one purpose: hunting. Their claws could tear through metal, their teeth could crush bone, and their eyes could see in total darkness. Most terrifying of all was their intelligence. They did not just kill, they hunted for pleasure. War Alpha Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the worlds they had conquered. Yellow dots showed the species they had enslaved. Green dots were the hunting preserves where they kept the most interesting prey alive for sport. The map was almost entirely red and yellow now. The Korthak Empire had consumed nearly everything. War Alpha, his second-in-command Korthak Zedhan, approached with his head bowed. Even among their own kind, the hierarchy was maintained through fear. The scouts have returned from the outer rim. They found something. Vextar's lips pulled back, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. More prey? A small blue world. Third planet from a yellow star. The dominant species appears to be bipedal, soft-skinned, and weak. They have no natural weapons. No claws, no thick hide, no poison. They fight each other with primitive projectile weapons. Vextar's eyes gleamed with interest. How many? Approximately 8 billion on the primary world. They have also spread to 2 nearby planets in their system. Small populations may be 50,000 total. The War Alpha laughed, a sound like breaking glass. 8 billion. That will provide excellent hunting for cycles to come. What do they call themselves? The translation is approximate, but they refer to their species as humans. Vextar walked to the great window of his ship. Outside, the stars waited. Somewhere out there was a world full of new prey, unaware that death was coming for them. The Korthak had perfected their hunting methods over millennia. First, they would strike the outer settlements to study their prey's reactions. Then they would establish hunting preserves on the main world. Finally, they would begin the long, pleasurable process of consuming the population while keeping enough alive to breed new generations. Prepare the hunting fleet, Vextar commanded. 50 ships should be sufficient for the initial harvest. Meanwhile, in the outer reaches of the Sol system, Captain Jake Murphy guided his exploration vessel through the asteroid belt. The Horizon was humanity's most advanced ship, built for deep space exploration and first contact protocols. Jake had been part of the team that established the colonies on Mars and Europa. He believed in humanity's future among the stars. Captain, his communications officer, Lieutenant Katie Martinez, looked up from her station with excitement. I'm picking up something unusual. Electromagnetic signals from outside our system. They're artificial, definitely created by intelligent life. Jake felt his heart race. This was the moment every explorer dreamed of. First contact with alien intelligence. Can you decode them? Working on it, sir. The patterns are complex, but I think they might be some kind of greeting or identification protocol. Send our standard first contact package, Jake ordered. All human languages, mathematical principles, and peaceful intentions. Let's make history. The transmission traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying humanity's hopes for peaceful contact with alien civilizations. On Mars, Commander Lisa Brooks was monitoring deep space communications when the reply came back. It was not what anyone expected. The signal was brief and harsh. When the translation computers finished their work, the message was simple. Prey located. Hunting fleet dispatched. Prepare for harvest. Lisa stared at the screen in confusion. That can't be right. Run the translation again. The computer processed the message a second time, then a third. Each time, the result was the same. Whatever had received humanity's peaceful greeting had responded with a threat. Get me Admiral Clark, Lisa ordered. Priority 1. Admiral Ryan Clark was in a meeting with the Defense Coalition when the emergency signal came through. At 62, he had spent his entire career preparing for threats from within the solar system, wars between Earth and the colonies, asteroid strikes, solar flares. He had never seriously considered the possibility of hostile alien life. Admiral, Lisa's voice crackled through the communication system. We've made contact with something. It's not good. Ryan dismissed his staff and took the call in private. What are you talking about, Commander? Sir, we sent out a first contact package 3 hours ago. We got a response. They're calling us prey. They're saying they're coming to harvest us. Ryan felt ice form in his stomach. How long do we have? Unknown, sir. But if they're already traveling toward us, it could be weeks, maybe months. Alert all defense stations. Recall all ships to Earth orbit. And Lisa? Yes, sir. This information does not leave this room until we know what we're dealing with. But the Korthak were already moving. Their hunting fleet traveled through space at speeds that human technology could barely detect. War Alpha Vextar stood in his command chamber, studying the data his scouts had gathered about their new prey. The humans seemed to live in family groups, caring for their young and elderly. They had art, music, and literature. They even kept smaller animals as companions. They form emotional attachments, Zedhan observed. This will make the hunt more interesting. Fear is always stronger when prey has something to lose. Vextar nodded. The Korthak had learned long ago that the best hunting came from species that cared about each other. Fear for oneself was one thing. Fear for loved ones was far more powerful and satisfying. Begin with the outer settlements, Vextar commanded. Let them watch their kind die. Let them understand what is coming for them. Fear makes the meat taste better. The hunting fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a collection of metal predators. Their ships were designed to inspire terror, with sharp edges and weapon arrays that looked like claws and teeth. They moved with purpose toward the human colonies, ready to begin the hunt that would last for generations. None of them realized they were about to encounter something that had never existed in their 3,000 years of hunting, a species that became more dangerous when protecting others. War Alpha Vextar watched the human settlements grow larger on his screens. The outer colonies looked so fragile, like soap bubbles floating in the darkness of space. Mars had 3 major dome cities where humans lived and worked. Europa had mining stations built into the ice. All of them were perfect hunting grounds. Begin the harvest, Vextar commanded. The Korthak ships moved like wolves closing in on sheep. They had done this countless times before. First, they would land and study their prey up close. Then they would separate the strong from the weak. The strong would provide good hunting. The weak would be kept alive for breeding. On Mars, Commander Lisa Brooks was working late in the communications center when the alarms started screaming. Her screens lit up with red warnings. 50 unknown ships had appeared in orbit around Mars and were descending toward the surface. All stations, this is command, Lisa spoke into her headset. We have incoming hostile ships. All defense teams to battle stations. This is not a drill. But even as she gave the orders, Lisa knew they were not ready for this. Mars had security forces to handle mining disputes and small conflicts. They were not prepared to fight alien invaders. The first Korthak ship landed outside New Shanghai, the largest dome city on Mars. The humans inside watched through their windows as the metal ship opened like a flower, revealing the creatures. Inside, Mayor Chen Williams was in his office when he saw them, 12 feet tall, covered in dark scales with claws that gleamed in the artificial light. They moved like cats, smooth and deadly. But it was their eyes that made his blood freeze. These creatures looked at the human city the way a child looks at a toy. Everyone stay inside, Chen broadcast to the city. Lock your doors. Stay away from windows. But the Korthak were not interested in breaking down doors yet. They walked through the streets slowly, studying everything. They looked at the human vehicles, the signs written in human languages, the small gardens where people grew flowers. One of them picked up a child's toy that had been left outside and examined it carefully. The humans inside their homes watched, in terror as the aliens moved through their city like tourists. The creatures were clearly intelligent, but there was something wrong with the way they looked at things. It was the way a scientist might study insects before dissecting them. On Europa, the situation was even worse. Captain Pete Johnson commanded the ice mining station there. His team of 30 miners and engineers watched their radar screens as Korthak ships landed around their facility. "What do they want?" asked Danny Mitchell, the station's head of security. "I don't think they want anything," Pete replied, watching the aliens through the security cameras. "I think they want us. The Korthak on Europa behaved differently than those on Mars." They began hunting immediately. 3 miners who were working outside when the ships landed tried to run back to the station. The aliens followed them, but slowly, like they were playing a game. Pete watched in horror as the creatures caught the first miner. Instead of killing him quickly, they seemed to be enjoying his fear. They carried him back to their ship while he screamed for help. "We have to do something," Danny said, reaching for his weapon. "With what?" Pete asked. "We have mining tools and a few security rifles. Look at those things. Our weapons probably won't even hurt them." Dr. Amy Rodriguez was on Earth when the reports started coming in from the colonies. As Earth's leading expert on alien life, she had always hoped that first contact would be peaceful. Now she was studying video feeds from Mars and Europa, trying to understand what humanity was facing. The creatures were clearly apex predators. Everything about their bodies was designed for hunting. Their movements, their behavior, even the way they looked at humans suggested they saw people as prey animals. "They're not trying to destroy our colonies," Amy told Admiral Ryan Clark during their emergency meeting. "They're establishing hunting grounds." "What does that mean?" Ryan asked. "Think about how humans hunt deer. We don't kill all the deer at two once. We manage the population. We keep some alive to breed so there will be more deer next season. That's what these creatures are doing to us." The reality of the situation hit Ryan like a physical blow. "They're farming us." "It's worse than that," Amy continued. "Based on their behavior, they're not just hunting for food. They're hunting for sport. They enjoy the fear. They enjoy the chase. This is entertainment for them." Back on Mars, the Korthak had finished their initial survey. War Alpha Vextar himself had come down to the surface to see the human settlements up close. He walked through New Shanghai like he owned it, and in his mind he did. The humans hiding in their homes reminded him of the Altarians from 2 centuries ago. That species had also built dome cities and tried to hide when the Korthak came. The hunt had lasted 50 years and provided excellent sport. But there was something different about these humans. When the Altarians saw Korthak hunters, they froze with terror or ran in panic. The humans were afraid, but they were also doing something else. They were watching. They were learning. Mayor Chen Williams observed the alien leader through his office window. The creature was clearly in charge, with better armor and more scars than the others. But Chen was not just watching in fear. He was studying the way the creature moved, looking for weaknesses. In his home across the city, engineer Tom Baker was doing the same thing. He had worked in construction for 20 years and understood how things were built. The alien's armor looked strong, but it had joints. Everything with joints had weak points. Teacher Helen Parker was in her apartment with her 2 children, but she was also taking notes. She had taught biology for 15 years. These creatures might look like monsters, but they were still biological beings. They had to have limits. The Korthak had hunted thousands of species across the galaxy. They knew the patterns. First came fear, then panic, then despair, then submission. It always happened the same way. But as War Alpha Vextar walked through the human city, he began to notice something that had never happened before in 3,000 years of hunting. The prey was not just afraid. The prey was getting angry. The Korthak had expected the humans to break. Every species did. Fear was supposed to make prey animals weak and stupid, but something was going wrong with the hunt on Mars. Sergeant Danny Mitchell had been hiding in the maintenance tunnels under New Shanghai for 3 days. The aliens had taken over the city above, using it as their base while they hunted humans through the streets. Danny could hear them moving around, their claws clicking on the metal floors. He should have been terrified. He should have been running away or looking for a place to surrender. Instead, Danny was building bombs. The maintenance tunnels were full of useful things: oxygen tanks, fuel lines, electrical cables, and chemical supplies for the water recycling systems. Danny had learned about explosives in the military, but he had never been creative with them before. Now, watching the aliens hunt his neighbors like animals, he found himself thinking of new ways to kill. Above him, a group of Korthak hunters was playing with their latest catch. They had cornered a family in the school building. The mother was crying, begging them to let her children go. The aliens seemed to enjoy this. They were taking their time, savoring the fear. Danny finished wiring his improvised explosive device and climbed up through a ventilation shaft. He could see the aliens through the grating. They were so focused on their victims that they had forgotten to watch for danger from other directions. When the bomb exploded, it took out the entire east wall of the school. 2 of the Korthak hunters were killed instantly. The third was wounded and trapped under debris. Danny dropped down through the hole in the ceiling, carrying a metal pipe like a weapon. The wounded alien looked at him with surprise. In 3,000 years of hunting, no prey species had ever hunted them back. Danny did not hesitate. He brought the pipe down on the creature's head again and again until it stopped moving. "Come on," he told the family. "We're getting out of here." But the mother just stared at him. "You killed it. You actually killed one of them." "Yeah," Danny said. "And I'm going to kill more." The news of Danny's attack spread through the human resistance networks. On Europa, Captain Pete Johnson heard the story and felt something change inside him. If one human with improvised weapons could kill Korthak hunters, then maybe they were not as hopeless as they seemed. Pete had been watching the aliens hunt his people for a week. They had taken 15 of his crew members so far, always choosing the ones who seemed most afraid. But Pete was not afraid anymore. He was angry. The mining station had equipment that could cut through solid rock. Pete began to wonder what it would do to alien armor. That night, when a group of Korthak hunters came to take more prisoners, they found the station empty. The humans had hidden in the deep mine shafts. But they had not run away. They had prepared a trap. When the aliens followed them into the tunnels, the humans used their mining lasers to collapse the passages behind them. The Korthak were trapped in a maze of tunnels with humans who knew every passage and every shortcut. The hunt that was supposed to last hours became a battle that lasted days. The humans used their knowledge of the mines to attack and disappear. They used their equipment to create weapons the aliens had never seen before. Most importantly, they used their anger to fuel their determination. By the time reinforcements arrived, the hunting party was dead, all of them. On Earth, Dr. Amy Rodriguez was studying the reports from the colonies with growing excitement. The humans were not just surviving, they were adapting. "This is unprecedented," she told Admiral Ryan Clark. "Every other species the Korthak have hunted has followed the same pattern. Fear leads to panic, panic leads to despair, despair leads to submission, but humans are doing something different." "What are they doing?" Ryan asked. "They're getting angrier. When humans see their families threatened, when they see their children in danger, they don't just feel fear. They feel rage. And rage makes them more dangerous, not less." Amy pulled up brain scans that had been taken during the attacks. "Look at this. When a human witnesses violence against someone they care about, their brain chemistry changes. The fear centers shut down and the aggression centers activate. They stop thinking about their own safety and start thinking about revenge." "Is that good or bad for us?" "It's very good. The Korthak are used to prey that becomes easier to catch over time. But humans become harder to catch. The more they hunt us, the better we get at hunting them back." War Alpha Vextar was beginning to understand that something was wrong with this hunt. He had lost more hunters in 2 weeks than he usually lost in 2 years. The humans were not behaving like prey animals. When his scouts reported that the mining station on Europa had become a death trap, Vextar decided to investigate personally. He found the remains of his hunting party scattered through the tunnels. The humans had used industrial equipment to tear the Korthak apart. But it was not just the killing that concerned him. It was the way it had been done. The humans had not just defended themselves. They had hunted his people with the same systematic efficiency that the Korthak used on their prey. On Mars, the situation was even worse. The human called Danny Mitchell had become something the Korthak had never encountered before, a prey animal that stalked predators. He moved through the city like a ghost, appearing only to kill alien hunters before disappearing again. The other humans had begun to follow his example. They were forming small groups, sharing information and coordinating attacks. They were learning to use the aliens' own hunting instincts against them. Teacher Helen Parker had organized the parents in her neighborhood into a fighting unit. They used their knowledge of child psychology to predict how the aliens would behave. When Korthak hunters came looking for easy prey in the residential areas, they found traps and ambushes instead. Engineer Tom Baker had figured out how to sabotage the alien equipment. The Korthak ships that landed in the city began suffering mysterious malfunctions. Their weapons failed at critical moments. Their armor developed weak spots that had not been there before. Most disturbing of all, the humans were communicating with each other across the solar system. They shared information about Korthak weaknesses, successful tactics, and improvised weapons. The prey was teaching other prey how to become predators. War Alpha Vextar stood in his command chamber, staring at the tactical displays. Red marks showed where his hunters had died. There were far too many red marks. For the first time in his long life, Vextar felt something he had never experienced before. He felt afraid. The prey was learning to hunt back. And they were getting very good at it. The Korthak Empire had never faced a military defeat. In 3,000 years they had conquered every world they visited, but the reports coming from the Sol system made no sense to the War Council. Impossible, growled General Thexmore, reading the casualty reports. Prey does not hunt predators. It is against the natural order. But War Alpha Vextar had seen it with his own eyes. The humans were not just fighting back anymore. They were winning. And they were teaching each other how to win. On Earth, Admiral Ryan Clark coordinated the resistance from a hidden command center deep underground. The humans had learned that the Korthak could track their electronic communications, so they had gone back to older methods. Runners carried messages between cities. Radio operators used codes that changed every day. Civilians painted symbols on walls to share information about alien movements. The defense was not centralized like a traditional military operation. Instead, every neighborhood, every building, every family had become its own fighting unit. The Korthak could not destroy the human resistance because there was no single target to attack. In the suburbs of Chicago, teacher Helen Parker had turned her elementary school into a fortress. She and 30 other parents had spent weeks preparing for the aliens to arrive. They knew the Korthak would come eventually. The creatures always hunted in areas where humans gathered to protect their children. When the alien ship landed in the school parking lot, Helen watched from her classroom window. 6 Korthak hunters emerged, moving with the confidence of creatures that had never met serious resistance. They walked toward the school building, expecting to find terrified humans hiding inside. Instead, they found an empty hallway lined with children's artwork and motivational posters. The silence felt wrong to them, but they could smell humans nearby. The first trap activated when they reached the library. Helen had filled the room with natural gas from the kitchen stoves. When the lead hunter stepped inside, a spark from a damaged light fixture ignited the gas. The explosion took out 2 aliens and wounded a third. The remaining hunters became more cautious, but they were still thinking like predators hunting prey. They did not expect the prey to have a plan. Helen and her team had studied the school's layout for weeks. They knew every hiding spot, every exit, and every room that could be turned into a trap. More importantly, they knew how to use the building's familiar spaces to their advantage. The aliens found themselves fighting in an environment designed for children. Low ceilings made it hard for 12-foot-tall creatures to move freely. Narrow hallways forced them to move in single file. Small doors and windows meant they could only enter rooms one at a time. When the last alien hunter died in the gymnasium, Helen stood over its body with a fire axe in her hands. She was covered in alien blood and her own blood from various cuts, but she was smiling. "Clean up this mess," she told the other parents. "And call the neighbors. Tell them it works." Across the planet, similar battles were taking place. Humans were learning that the Korthak had weaknesses. They were strong and fast, but they were not smart in the same way humans were smart. They understood hunting, but they did not understand war. In New York City, police officer Bobby Lee had discovered something that made his blood boil. The aliens were not just killing humans. They were keeping some alive for experiments. In an abandoned warehouse, he found cages full of people who had been subjected to torture and testing. Bobby did not call for backup. He did not wait for orders. He armed himself with every weapon he could carry and went into the warehouse alone. The Korthak scientists inside expected him to be afraid. Instead, they found themselves facing a human who had moved beyond fear into something far more dangerous. Bobby killed every alien in the building, then broadcast video of what he had found to resistance networks around the world. The images of human prisoners in alien cages spread through the internet faster than the Korthak could stop them. Every person who saw those videos felt the same thing Bobby had felt. Not just anger, but a cold, focused rage that demanded action. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had been studying human brain activity during combat with the aliens. Her research showed that humans who had seen evidence of Korthak cruelty underwent a permanent change in their neural patterns. They became more focused, more creative, and more willing to take risks. "It's like they're becoming specialized hunters," she explained to Admiral Clark. "When humans see their people being tortured or killed, their brains rewire themselves for maximum efficiency in killing the threat." Is that why we're winning? We're winning because the Korthak made a fundamental mistake. They thought fear would make us weak. Instead, they made us angry, and angry humans are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Captain Tony Garcia had evacuated thousands of civilians from Los Angeles when the aliens first arrived. Now he was leading those same civilians back to retake their city, but they were not the same people who had fled in terror 2 months ago. They had spent weeks training in the desert, learning to fight as a unit. They had studied captured alien weapons and armor. Most importantly, they had learned to channel their fear and anger into tactical planning. The Korthak occupation force in Los Angeles expected to fight a few human soldiers. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by an entire population that had transformed itself into an army. Office workers used their knowledge of the city's infrastructure to sabotage alien equipment. Construction workers used their tools to create weapons and fortifications. Even children helped by carrying messages and supplies. The battle for Los Angeles lasted 3 days. When it was over, the Korthak were gone, and the humans were still there. War Alpha Vextar received the final report from Earth while standing in his private chambers. Every hunting party had been destroyed. Every occupation force had been eliminated. The humans had not just defended their world. They had hunted down every Korthak on the planet. For the first time in his species' history, Vextar felt what every prey animal had felt when facing the Korthak. He felt helpless. He felt hunted. The humans were coming for him next, and he knew it. War Alpha Vextar had made a terrible mistake. He thought the humans were beaten when they lost their colonies. He thought they would surrender when they saw how easily the Korthak could kill them. Instead, the humans had done something no species had ever done before. They had learned to hunt the hunters. The great warship that had brought terror to 1,000 worlds now felt like a prison. Vextar paced through the corridors, listening to his crew whisper in voices filled with fear. The Korthak Empire was crumbling, and it was all because of one small blue planet. War Alpha, his communications officer reported with a trembling voice. "The humans are broadcasting something. They want you to hear it." On the main screen, a human face appeared. It was Admiral Ryan Clark, standing in what looked like the ruins of a Korthak command post. Behind him, human soldiers were carrying alien weapons and wearing pieces of Korthak armor as trophies. "War Alpha Vextar," Ryan said calmly. "My name is Admiral Clark of the Human Defense Coalition. We know you can hear this. We want to talk." Vextar's claws extended involuntarily. No prey species had ever demanded to speak with him as an equal. "What do you want, human?" "We want you to leave our system. Now. Take your ships and go back to whatever hole you crawled out of. This is your only warning." The War Alpha laughed, but it sounded forced even to his own ears. "You think you can threaten the Korthak Empire? We have ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. We have consumed worlds that your species cannot even imagine. Maybe, Ryan replied. But those worlds didn't have humans on them, and now you know why that matters. The transmission ended, leaving Vexitar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew waited for orders. But for the first time in his life, the War Alpha did not know what to do. The problem was not just military defeat. The Korthak had lost battles before, though rarely. The problem was that they had lost something far more important. They had lost their confidence. An empire built on fear could not survive once its own people began to feel afraid. On Earth, Captain Jake Murphy was preparing for the final phase of the war. The exploration ship that had first detected the Korthak signals was now leading a strike force toward the alien fleet. But these were not the same humans who had sent peaceful greetings into space months ago. Jake's ship had been rebuilt with weapons taken from defeated Korthak hunters. His crew wore armor made from alien materials. Most importantly, they carried with them the knowledge of how to kill creatures that had never known fear. Target their command ship, Jake ordered. Let's finish this. The human attack fleet was small compared to the remaining Korthak forces. But size no longer mattered. The aliens had learned to fear human creativity, human determination, and human rage. When the humans attacked, the Korthak fleet scattered instead of fighting back. War Alpha Vexitar watched his empire fall apart on the tactical displays. Ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds were fleeing from a handful of human vessels. Crews that had never known defeat were abandoning their posts rather than face the creatures they had once thought of as prey. All ships, Vexitar commanded, converge on my position. We make our stand here. But only half his fleet responded. The others had already begun the journey back to Korthak space, carrying with them stories that would spread fear throughout the Empire. Stories of humans who fought like demons when defending their families. Stories of prey animals that had become predators. The final battle took place in the asteroid belt where humanity had first detected the alien signals. Jake Murphy led the human fleet in a direct assault on Vexitar's flagship, while the War Alpha commanded his remaining forces in what he knew would be his last fight. The Korthak fought with the desperation of creatures who knew they were going to die. But desperation was not enough. The humans fought with something stronger. They fought with the knowledge that they were protecting their world, their families, and their future. When the boarding parties reached Vexitar's command deck, the War Alpha was waiting for them. He stood alone among the bodies of his crew, his claws still dripping with alien blood. Even in defeat, he was magnificent and terrible. So, Vexitar said to the humans surrounding him, the prey has become the predator. Jake stepped forward, holding a weapon that had been designed to kill. Korthak. We were never prey. We just didn't know we were predators yet. What happens now? Vexitar asked. Will you hunt my people as we hunted yours? Jake considered the question. Around him, his crew waited for his answer. These were people who had lost friends and family to the Korthak. They had every reason to want revenge. No, Jake said finally. We're not like you. We don't hunt for pleasure. But if your people ever come back to human space, if they ever threaten our families again, we will hunt them to extinction. Make sure they understand that. War Alpha Vexitar died as he had lived, with claws extended and teeth bared. But his last expression was not one of rage or defiance. It was fear. Pure, absolute fear of the humans who had taught monsters what it meant to be hunted. The news of Vexitar's defeat spread through the galaxy faster than the Korthak could control it. Species that had lived in terror for centuries learned that the great predators could be beaten. Some began to rebel against their Korthak overlords. Others simply stopped being afraid. But it was the message that Captain Jake Murphy broadcast to every Korthak world that truly ended the Empire. This is humanity, Jake said, standing on the bridge of Vexitar's captured flagship. We are the species you tried to hunt. We are the prey that became predators. Your War Alpha is dead. Your fleet is destroyed. Your empire is finished. Any Korthak who enters human space will die. Any Korthak who threatens human colonies will be hunted down. We are not your prey. We are your nightmare. Remember that. Dr. Amy Rodriguez later wrote in her report to the Galactic Council that the Korthak Empire collapsed not because of military defeat, but because of psychological trauma. A species that had built its identity around being the ultimate predators could not survive the knowledge that something even more dangerous existed. The Korthak retreated to their home worlds where they remain to this day. They no longer hunt other species. They no longer expand their territory. They live in fear of the day when humans might decide to visit them. The galaxy learned an important lesson from the fall of the Korthak Empire. True predators are not defined by claws or teeth or natural weapons. True predators are defined by their willingness to become monsters in defense of those they love. Humanity had proven that when it comes to protecting their families, humans are the most dangerous creatures in the universe.